The Forbidden Story of Jabari Mansa. Cold open. The boy was not in the cotton. That was the first thing. The overseer, Silas Rooks, felt the discord in the rhythm of the field before he saw it. A gap in the synchronized, agonizing ballet of bent backs and moving sacks. He reined his horse to a stop, the leather of his saddle creaking like a warning. His eyes, pale and perpetually narrowed against the Carolina sun, scanned the rows of Sea Island cotton, a rippling, greenish-white sea of bowls and despair. He counted the figures. One short. He didn't shout. Silas Rooks rarely shouted. His voice was a low, rasping instrument, like a saw through cypress. "Where is the Mansa boy?" The other workers, men and women, did not stop. Their bodies kept moving, fingers flying, sacks dragging. But a silence fell upon them, a silence more profound than any noise. It was the silence of held breath, of hearts beating against ribs. An elderly man, Cudjoe, straightened a fraction, his face a mask of worn leather. He took to the sickness in his belly, Sue. In the privy trench. Rooks's lips thinned. He had seen the boy that morning, a slender shadow against the dawn. There had been a stillness about him, a depth in his eyes that Rooks had always disliked. It was not the vacancy of broken spirits, it was a reservoir, waiting. He nudged his horse forward, circling the edge of the field toward the foul-smelling trench at the wood line. It was empty. A cold, quiet fury settled in Rooks's gut. He turned his horse and walked it slowly back along the edge of the vast plantation, his gaze sweeping the boundary where the ordered tyranny of Belvedere met the chaotic, whispering darkness of the great dismal swamp. A mile of cleared land, a no-man's land of stumps and scrub, stood as a warning. Beyond it, the swamp breathed, a vast, miasmic entity of murky water, towering bald cypress hung with ghostly moss, and things that slithered and screamed in the night. It was a green tomb. Few who entered it ever returned, and those who did were never whole. But the boy was not in the cotton. And the swamp, for a soul desperate enough, was not just a tomb. It was a mouth. Rooks turned his horse back toward the big house, a white-pillared monstrosity gleaming like a bone in the distance. He would inform the master, Elias Finch. They would bring the hounds. But as he rode, the overseer felt a peculiar unease. The boy, Jabari, had taken nothing. No food, no knife, no extra clothing. He had simply vanished from his row, leaving only the imprint of his knees in the dirt and a single, perfectly formed cotton bowl placed neatly on the sack he had been dragging, as if in final payment. The breaking of the world ****. He was born in the bruised hour before dawn, in the dirt-floored cabin that smelled of smoke, sweat, and time. His mother, Alma, was a woman of the Igbo, though she never spoke of it. She labored in silence, her hands gripping the rough post of the sleeping pallet, while the midwife, Nanny P., murmured words that were not English. The child emerged not with a wail, but with a quiet, observant stillness. Nanny P. cleaned him, her gnarled fingers tracing the lines of his face. "He has old eyes," she whispered to Alma. "See how they take in the light. He is a deep one. A rememberer." Alma, exhausted, drew him to her breast. She had already lost two, one stillborn, one taken by the summer fever. This one, she would name for strength. She called him Jabari, the brave one. It was a secret name, a true name, spoken only in the dark shelter of their cabin. To the world of Belvedere, he would be Tom. But in her heart and in his soul, he was Jabari. His father, Kwame, was a driver. A big man, quiet as a mountain, who bore the terrible, conflicted burden of his position, enforcing the master's will to perhaps soften its blow for his own. He would come in at night, the smell of the fields and a profound sadness clinging to him. He would lift little Jabari high, a rare smile breaking his stern face. See the world, little lion, he'd rumble in their stolen tongue. See it all. Remember it. Jabari's world was a circumscribed universe of pain and small beauties. The quarter, 2 rows of daub and wattle cabins, roofed with worn shingles. The smell of ash cakes and boiling field peas from the single hearth where all cooked. The sound of the conch shell horn that ripped them from sleep, and the bell that called them to labor. The vast, terrifying expanse of the cotton field, a green ocean that stretched to the horizon, where he learned to crawl behind his mother, picking worms from the plants with tiny fingers. His first memory of pure terror was the sound of hooves. He was 4, playing with a corn-husk doll near the smokehouse. A wagon rolled into the yard, driven by a stranger with a wide-brimmed hat. Master Finch stood on the porch with Silas Rooks. Papers were exchanged. Then Kwame was brought forward, his hands unbound but his head held in a way Jabari had never seen, like a tree about to fall. Alma let out a sound, a choked animal noise, and rushed forward, only to be blocked by Rooks's casual, backhanded slap. It was not a brutal blow, but a dismissive one, as one would swat a fly. The quiet cruelty of it froze everyone. Kwame looked at Alma, then at Jabari. He did not speak. He simply looked, pouring everything he was into that gaze, love, sorrow, warning, strength. Then he climbed onto the wagon. It rolled away, down the live oak alley, and out of their lives forever. Jabari did not cry. He stored the image, his father's broad back, the dust from the wheels, the vacant space where he had stood. He stored the sound of his mother's weeping, which was not loud, but a deep, shivering rent in the fabric of the night. He stored the feel of Rooks's indifference. This was the way of the world. It could break a mountain and call it business. The quiet and the craft ***. Daily life was a scripture written in fatigue. Up in the star-chilled dark, a hurried meal of cold leftovers, then the march to the fields. Jabari graduated from worm picker to water carrier, a small boy lugging a heavy oak bucket with a gourd dipper, moving between the endless rows under the hammer of the sun. He learned the hierarchy of suffering. The house servants, like Martha the cook, wore cast-off linens and spoke in soft whispers, but their eyes were watchful and afraid in a different way. The field hands, his people, were beasts of burden clothed in Osnaburg, a coarse, scratchy hemp. The children, until they were 10 or so, worked half-days, but a half-day under Rooks was a full day in hell. Master Elias Finch was not a red-faced rager. He was a tall, gaunt man with the pale, delicate hands of a scholar and the cold eyes of an accountant. He believed in systems, in order, in the mathematical certainty of profit and loss. His cruelty was administrative. He measured rations, calculated work rates, and prescribed punishments with the detached air of a doctor bleeding a patient. A short yield meant reduced food. Slowness meant the whip, not administered in a rage, but in measured, efficient strokes, tallied in a ledger. He viewed the people he owned as a flawed but necessary machinery. Maintenance was required, sentiment was a weakness. Silas Rooks was his instrument. A man of sinew and gristle, Rooks believed in the gospel of pressure. Constant, relentless, grinding pressure. He did not need to shout or froth. A pointed finger, a slow shake of the head, the quiet statement, "You will regret that choice," were more effective than any lash. The lash was merely the period at the end of his sentence. He watched Jabari closely. The boy's silence unnerved him. It wasn't sullenness or stupidity. It was a watchful, gathering silence. Jabari's unique trait was this very quality: he was a vessel. He absorbed everything. He remembered the path a rabbit took to its warren, the way the water curled around a particular cypress knee in the swamp's edge, the pattern of the stars in different seasons, the sound of different birds, which meant a fox was near, which meant rain was coming. He listened to the old ones, like Cudjoe and Nanny P, when they spoke in fragments of the old times, of rivers that flowed the other way, of animals with names that sounded like music. And he developed a secret skill. In the stolen twilight moments, he began to weave. Using discarded reeds from the rice fields, strips of oak bark, even strands pulled secretly from the cotton sack, he would fashion small, intricate things, a perfect basket no bigger than a thimble, a tiny fish with scaled wings, a knot that was a puzzle. He kept them hidden in a hollow beneath a sweet gum tree at the edge of the woods. This craft, this making of order and beauty from scraps, was his rebellion. It was a memory of a skill he had never been taught, a lineage speaking through his fingers. The escalation. When Jabari was 12, the pressure found a new target, his mother. Alma's spirit, once a low, steady flame, had dimmed after Kwame's sale. She moved through the days like a shade. One afternoon, exhausted and dizzy from the heat, she stumbled, tearing a cotton plant from the ground. Rooks was there instantly. He didn't strike her. He simply said, "Careless, Alma. That plant was worth $1. The master does not tolerate waste." The punishment was to work the night shift in the rice mill, a place of choking dust and whirring, dangerous machinery, after a full day in the field. It was a death sentence by inches. Jabari watched her leave that night, her figure swallowed by the darker dark of the mill shed. He heard the cough start, a dry, hacking thing, and it never left her. Within a season, she was a ghost of herself. Nanny P tried remedies, pine needle tea, poultices, but the dust had settled in her lungs like a fine, killing sand. The night she died, she called Jabari to her pallet. Her breath was a ragged bellows. She took his face in her hot, thin hands. "Your name is Jabari Mansa," she whispered, the words costing her dearly. "Mansa. Do you understand? Your father's father, a kingly man. A leader. Remember. You are not of this place. Your soul has a map. Find it." She pressed something into his palm, a small, smooth stone, dark blue with a single white vein running through it like a road. It was the only thing she had managed to keep from across the water. Her death was logged by Master Finch, female, Alma, aged approximate 35. Cause, lung ailment. Value, lost. She was buried in the scrub plot beyond the quarters, marked only by a broken piece of fieldstone. Jabari did not cry at the grave. He stood, the blue stone burning in his fist, and looked past the fence, past the no-man's land, to the wall of the swamp. The map. The mouth. His suffering now was a solitary thing. He was assigned to a new cabin, with strangers. He worked harder, longer, his adolescent body hardening into corded muscle. He spoke less, observed more. He began, with methodical patience, to prepare. A stolen kitchen knife honed to a sharp point on a smooth rock. A little parched corn and dried pork, wrapped in a cloth and hidden in the hollow tree. He studied Rooks's routines, the patrol patterns of the hounds, the moon phases. He listened to tales of the swamp, of the Great Dismal, a place of panthers, rattlers, quicksand, and something worse, the patrols, bands of poor white men paid to hunt runaways, who knew the swamp's few paths. The turning point came on a sweltering Sunday afternoon. The enslaved were given a few hours of their own time. Jabari was at his sweet gum tree, adding a new woven piece, a small, perfect basket with a lid. He heard a twig snap. He turned to see a young boy, Micah, the son of Martha the cook, watching him with wide eyes. Micah was a house child, lighter-skinned, often taunted by the field children. He pointed a trembling finger at the woven treasures laid out. You make and conjure things?" Micah whispered, half afraid, half awed. Jabari shook his head slowly. He picked up a small woven bird and offered it. Micah, after a hesitation, took it. A fragile, silent bond was formed. Micah, in his world of whispered secrets from the big house, became an unexpected ally. A week later, he found Jabari at the well. Without looking at him, Micah muttered, "Master Finch got papers. He talkin' about sellin' a strong young hand to a trader from Alabama. Silas been lookin' at you." He then walked quickly away. The news was a cold bolt. Alabama was a mythic land of deeper suffering, a point of no return. The map in his soul, the road on the stone, flared to life. It was time. The mouth of the swamp. He chose his moment with the precision of an instinct long-honed. It was the night of the new moon, a darkness so thick it felt like wool. The air was heavy with the promise of a coming storm, which would cover his scent. He took only the knife, the little food, the blue stone, and a coil of rope he'd made from braided strips of cloth. He slipped from his cabin, becoming a shadow among shadows. He avoided the lane, moving instead through the vegetable patches, past the silent slave quarters, and into the woods at the plantation's northern edge. He reached the no-man's land, a field of stumps like rotted teeth in the gloom. He dropped to his belly and began to crawl. It took an hour to cross it, the coarse stubble tearing at his clothes and skin. He could hear the distant bark of a dog at a neighboring farm, but nothing from Belvedere. He reached the edge of the swamp. The temperature dropped. The air changed, becoming cool, damp, and alive with sound, the primordial symphony of frogs, the hum of insects, the occasional splash, the groan of wood. The smell was of decay and immense, fecund life. It was the mouth, and he stepped into it. His plan was not to flee north. The swamps were a known route, and the patrols watched the northern trails. His plan, born from listening to Cudjoe's old stories, was to go in. To go so deep, so far into the green heart of the dismal, that no one would follow. To find the hidden communities whispered about, the Maroons, the ones who had vanished and made a world apart. The first days were a delirium of survival. He moved by night, rested by day in makeshift platforms in trees. He drank the tannin-stained water from cypress knees, filtering it through his shirt. He ate cattail roots, boiled frogs over tiny, hidden fires, and once, with a well-thrown rock, killed a possum. The swamp was not a passive wilderness, it was an active adversary. Leeches found him in the water. Mosquitoes clouded around his head. He lost the stolen knife to the muck while fending off a cottonmouth. The braided rope saved him from a patch of quicksand, his arms screaming as he pulled himself to solid ground. But he also found his map. The patterns he'd spent a lifetime observing served him. He navigated by the growth of moss, by the subtle flow of the water, by the stars when the canopy broke. The blue stone was his talisman. He was Jabari Mansa, and he was remembering how to be free. Back at Belvedere, the hunt was brief. The hounds lost his scent at the water's edge. Silas Rook stared into the oppressive green wall and declared, "He's dead. The swamps got him." Master Finch made a notation, male, Tom, aged approximate 16. Absconded. Presumed deceased. It was a closed account. But in the quarters, a different story was told in hushed tones. The boy with the old eyes had walked into the mouth and had not been eaten. He had gone to find his kingdom. The reversal ***. Jabari did not die. He found what he was looking for, though it was not a kingdom of gold, but one of mud, sweat, and fierce, hard-won liberty. Deep in the trackless heart of the dismal, after weeks of wandering, he was found. Or rather, he was captured, by men and women who moved through the swamp like part of it. They were dark, grim-faced, armed with spears and makeshift muskets. They brought him, weak and feverish, to an island, a vast, raised hummock of land hidden in the center of the morass. It was a maroon community. Dozens of cabins, some on stilts, surrounded by hidden gardens of sweet potatoes and beans, and pens for stolen hogs and chickens. The people here were from everywhere: Igbo, Congo, Mandinka, Creoles born in captivity. Their leader was a man named Bashi, missing an eye, with a body crisscrossed with the scars of 100 fights. He questioned Jabari for hours, testing his story, his will, his spirit. "Why did you come here, boy?" "Not to the North Star," Bashi asked, his single eye gleaming. "The North Star is a hope," Jabari rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "But it is a road they know. This is a place they forget. My mother said my soul had a map. It led me here." He showed Bashi the blue stone. The old man took it, turned it over, and for the first time, a hint of something like respect touched his face. "Mansa," he grunted. "I have heard that word. It is a heavy name to carry. Can you carry it?" Jabari stayed. He learned their ways, how to set traps that sang in the wind to warn of intruders, how to make black powder from swamp materials, how to fight. He grew into a man, quiet and respected, a scout with an uncanny sense of the land. He led raids on isolated plantations for tools, weapons, and to bring others back, the broken, the desperate, the ones with fire still in them. He never took a wife, though women offered. His family was the community, his mission was its protection. Years bled into decades. The Civil War came and went, a distant thunder. Emancipation was a rumor that finally reached the swamp, carried by a ragged Union soldier who'd gotten lost. The community slowly, cautiously, dispersed. Some went to find family. Some went to claim their 40 acres. Bashi died an old man, free in his heart long before any proclamation. Jabari, now a man in his 50s with a face carved from seasoned oak, did not leave. He watched his people go with a nod and a quiet blessing. When the last family departed, he remained on the hidden island. He lived alone in the silent village, tending the gardens, remembering every face, every story. Conclusion: The Rememberer. One afternoon, many years later, an old man with skin like polished walnut sat on a stump, weaving a basket from river cane. His hands were steady, the work flawless. Before him, on a piece of deerskin, lay a collection of small, perfect woven objects: a bird, a fish, a basket with a lid. Next to them was a smooth blue stone with a white vein. He heard the clumsy, noisy approach of men long before he saw them, surveyors, pushing into the swamp, mapping it for drainage and timber. They stumbled into the clearing and froze, seeing the cultivated plots, the weathered cabins, and the old man who seemed to have grown from the earth itself. One man, younger, bold, stepped forward. "Hey, uncle. You live out here all alone?" The old man looked up. His eyes were indeed old, deep pools that held the reflection of the cypress and the sky. He said nothing. The surveyor shifted, uncomfortable. "We're mapping the land. This all belongs to the Cypress Land Company now. You'll have to move on." Jabari Mansa smiled, a small, private thing that held no warmth for the intruder. He looked past the man, past the clearing, into the deep, remembering green of the swamp. He saw the rows of cotton, the face of his father disappearing in dust, the light leaving his mother's eyes, the silent, watchful cruelty of Silas Rooks, the terror and triumph of his journey. He saw the community that had been, the lives forged in freedom's secret heart. He picked up the blue stone, feeling the road beneath his thumb. They could drain the swamp. They could cut the trees. They could plot the land on their paper maps and claim it with their laws. But they could not map what had happened here. They could not own the memory. He turned his gaze back to the surveyor, and in a voice that was soft yet carried the weight of the ages, he finally spoke. "No," he said. You will have to move on. Then he went back to his weaving, his fingers telling a story in reed and bark that no ledger would ever record, a story America tried to erase forever. He was the rememberer. And as long as he breathed, the map was not lost. ##### Part 6, The Weight of Names. The surveyors did not return. Whether it was the old man's unnerving stillness, the unsettling perfection of the abandoned village, or simply the swamp's own inimical will, they left the island alone. For Jabari, their intrusion was a ripple on a deep, still pond, a confirmation of the outside world's relentless hunger, and a reminder of the sanctuary's fragility. He lived on, a sentinel. His daily routines were rituals of memory. He tended the collapsing roofs of the empty cabins not out of necessity, but out of respect. He cleared the gardens, and the food he grew he left at the edge of the known trails, offerings for any who might still be out there, hiding, lost, or free. Sometimes, the offerings vanished. He would find tracks, a bare foot, the pad of a wild dog, the delicate imprint of a deer. He never sought to see who took them. The gift was in the giving, the connection was enough. His own body began to chart its map of time. His knees, which had carried him through miles of muck, protested on damp mornings. His back, once straight as a cypress sapling, developed a permanent, gentle curve, as if bowing to the earth that had sustained him. But his hands, his weaver's hands, remained steady. And his mind, that vast reservoir, grew only more profound. He began to inscribe the story. Not on paper, which he did not have, nor with words alone, which felt insufficient. He returned to his craft, the secret skill that had been his first rebellion. Using the swamp's bounty, dyed reeds, bleached bones, charred wood, tufts of moss, he began a new project. In the largest cabin, the one that had been Bashi's, he worked on the wall. He wove a tapestry, not of fabric, but of the land itself. It started as a simple pattern, a geometric border. Then, figures emerged. A man and woman, their forms abstract yet full of sorrow, holding a small child between them. A wagon, its lines angular and cruel, rolling away. A field of white dots on a green background, endless. A white house with pillars like prison bars. Then, the swamp, a chaotic, beautiful tangle of green and brown, and within it, a single, clear path. A community of stick-figure people raising roofs, holding spears, faces marked not with features but with posture, shoulders back, heads high. He wove in the blue stone, embedding it where the heart of the community would be. It was his history. It was their history. It was a scripture in reed and memory, a bulwark against the erasure that was the world's default setting. One autumn, when the air turned crisp and the mosquitoes retreated, a visitor came. Not a surveyor, not a lost hunter. A woman. She appeared at the edge of the clearing at dusk, a silhouette against the fire-red maples. She was perhaps 40, her skin the color of rich coffee, her dress a faded but clean calico. She carried a bundle in her arms and a weariness in her stance that spoke of long roads. Jabari saw her from his doorway. He did not move, did not call out. He simply waited, his hand resting on the smooth haft of his fishing spear. The woman took a tentative step forward, then another. Her eyes scanned the village, the gardens, and finally settled on him. She approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. They say in the town, there's an old man in the swamp who remembers, she said, her voice low and melodic. They say he knew Bashi. They say he knew the ones who got away. Jabari remained silent. My name is Ruth, she continued, her courage wavering under his gaze. She shifted the bundle, which Jabari now saw was a sleeping child, a boy of about 4. My granddaddy, he was brought here once. Long time ago. He was a boy, running from a place called Belvedere. His name was Micah. The name landed in Jabari's chest like a stone dropped into a still well. Micah. The house boy with the wide eyes. The giver of the warning. The holder of the woven bird. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he gestured with his head toward the fire pit, where a small pot of stew simmered. "Sit," he said, the word rusty from disuse. Her name was Ruth, and her story unfolded over a bowl of rabbit and sassafras root stew. Micah had survived Belvedere. He had been trained as a valet for Master Finch's son, had learned to read scraps of newspapers, had endured a different kind of servitude in the house. After the war, he had wandered, eventually settling in a freedman's town 30 miles distant. He had married, had children, had been a preacher of a small, fervent congregation. He had often spoken of the swamp, not as a place of terror, but as a legend of sanctuary. He spoke of a silent boy who could weave magic from reeds, who had vanished into the green and, in the stories, had built a kingdom. "He died last winter," Ruth said, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. "But before he passed, he told me. If you ever need to remember where you come from, child, you find that swamp. You find the rememberer. He carries the true names." She looked down at her sleeping son. "This is Elijah. I want him to know. I want him to have a true name." Jabari looked at the boy, at the smooth, untested brow, the innocent mouth. He saw the echo of a frightened child offering a warning a lifetime ago. The map was not just a path through the swamp, it was a chain of lives, each link a story, holding the weight of the ones before and the ones to come. He rose, stiffly, and went into his cabin. He returned with two things. One was the small, woven bird, its shape still perfect after 50 years of care. The other was a new piece, finished just that week, a medallion of woven sweetgrass and eagle feather, in the shape of a protective knot. He handed the bird to Ruth. "For you. A gift from your grandfather, through my hands." She took it, her fingers trembling as they traced the intricate work. A sob caught in her throat, but she held it back. Then Jabari knelt, with great effort, before the sleeping boy. He placed the medallion around Elijah's neck. He leaned close and whispered, so softly only the child in his dreams might hear, "Your name is Mansa. It means kingly man. A leader. Remember." Ruth stayed for 3 days. She helped in the garden, drew water, listened. Jabari did not tell his story in a linear narrative. He pointed to the tapestry on the wall. "This is the father I knew," he would say, touching the woven figure. "This is the sound of my mother's weeping." He showed her the hidden traps, the old lookout posts. He taught her how to find the clean water, the edible roots. He was passing on the map. On the morning she left, with the mist clinging to the cypress knees, she turned to him. "Come with us. You shouldn't be alone." He shook his head, a slow, final movement. "My place is here. The world out there, it has its own forgetting to do. My work is here, to remember." He looked at Elijah, now awake and holding his mother's hand. "You carry it now. Tell them. The brave ones. The kings and queens they tried to make into mules. Tell them." He watched them until they disappeared into the curtain of moss and vine, the small boy turning once to wave at the old man who was now part of his story. The final weave ***. The years after Ruth's visit were quieter, yet Jabari felt a new purpose. He was no longer just a guardian of a physical place, but a curator of a legacy. He continued his tapestry, expanding it. He added a small house with a church spire for Micah. He wove in a woman and a child at the swamp's edge. The story grew, spilling onto a second wall. He felt his own strength ebbing, a slow retreat like the swamp waters in a dry season. One morning, he could not rise from his pallet. A deep, cold ache had settled in his bones. He knew, with the certainty of a man who has read the land his whole life, that this was the final turn in his path. He was not afraid. Fear had been burned out of him long ago, in the fires of loss and the waters of the dismal. What he felt was a profound urgency, a final duty. Over 3 days, as his breath grew shallow, he worked from his bed, his hands moving in the air as if weaving the last threads. He was finishing the story. In his mind's eye, he saw the complete tapestry. It did not end with his own figure. It ended with a road leading out of the swamp, not back to the plantation, but forward into a dappled, unknown light. And on that road were many figures, of all ages, walking forward, carrying baskets and tools and children, their woven faces turned toward the future, their backs to the green sanctuary that had saved them. On the third evening, as the last of the sun filtered through the cypress in long, golden shafts, Jabari Mansa took the blue stone from his pocket. He held it tight in his palm, the white vein like a crack of lightning in a night sky. He thought of Alma's fevered hands, of Kwame's lifting him high, of the silence of the cotton rows, of Bashi's single, assessing eye, of Ruth's grateful tears, of a little boy named Elijah who now carried a king's name. He smiled. They had tried to erase it all. They had ledgers for bodies, bills of sale for souls, maps for stolen land. But they had no ledger for the love between a mother and son in a dirt-floor cabin. No bill of sale for the courage it took to walk into a swallowing green mouth. No map for the hidden island in the heart, where freedom was woven, day by day, from reeds and resilience. His breath slowed, became part of the evening chorus of frogs and wind. The blue stone slipped from his fingers and came to rest on his chest, over his quiet heart. The rememberer had finished his work. The story was woven. It was now in the keeping of the wind, the water, the roots, and the ones who would, in time, come looking for the map. Epilogue, the unerased. The island remains. The great dismal swamp was never fully tamed. Deep in its interior, where the water is black and the trees are giants, a raised hummock of land holds the ghosts of a village. Decades after Jabari's passing, a historian, a young woman piecing together fragments of maroon communities from tax records and folk tales, heard a story from an elderly midwife in a freedman's town. The midwife, whose name was Ruth, now very old, told of her grandfather Micah, and of a journey she took as a young mother to see an old man who wrote history on walls. It took the historian years to find the island, using old survey maps and modern satellite imagery that could see through the canopy. When she finally pushed through the last curtain of vine, she found the cabins, collapsed but their outlines clear. She found the overgrown gardens, the fire pit now a mossy depression. And in the largest cabin, she found the tapestry. Time and damp had taken their toll. Much of it had returned to the earth. But sections remained, preserved under fallen bark and clay. A fragment showed stark geometric rows. Another showed a community of stick figures. A third showed a path leading into a beautiful chaos of green. And on the dirt floor, near a simple sleeping platform of weathered cypress, she found a smooth blue stone with a single white vein. Next to it, perfectly preserved in the dry soil under the eaves, was a collection of tiny, miraculous weavings, a bird, a fish, a basket with a lid. She did not take them. She sat on the earth floor of that silent place, surrounded by the sighing of the swamp, and she understood. This was not a site to be excavated, catalogued, and placed behind glass. That would be another kind of capture. This was a place to bear witness. The story had not been erased. It had been waiting. It had been remembered by the land itself, whispered in the rustle of reeds, held in the patient depth of the black water, woven into the very fabric of the place. She left as she came, disturbing nothing. But she carried the story out. Not as a citation in an academic paper, but as a sacred trust. A story of a boy named Jabari, who was brave. Of a man named Mansa, who was kingly. Of a people who, in the deepest dark, wove their own light. And so, the forbidden story America tried to erase forever persists. It persists in the name Elijah Mansa, now a teacher in a small southern town, who tells his students that history is not just in books written by the powerful, but in the songs we've forgotten, the crafts we dismiss, and the quiet, unyielding strength of those who, against all odds, remembered who they were. It persists in the swamp, which keeps its secrets well. And it persists here, in these words, a final act of weaving, a testament to the indelible map of the human spirit, which no cruelty can ever truly destroy.